0917 UTC, September 3, 2025. The South China Sea is flat and bright under a mid-morning sun. 43 nautical miles northwest of Mischief Reef, the Philippine Coast Guard vessel BRP Sindangan is running southeast at 14 knots, escorting a pair of wooden supply boats carrying rice, fuel, and medicine for Filipino fishermen sheltering near the Spratly Islands. It is supposed to be a routine resupply mission. It is not going to be routine. Behind the Sindangan, closing at 22 knots, the Chinese Coast Guard cutter CCG-5204 is already running its water cannon. White streams arc across the Philippine vessel's stern like liquid hammers, each blast carrying enough hydraulic force to shatter reinforced glass, tear away communications antennas, and knock an unbraced sailor clean off his feet into open water. The Sindangan's crew is bracing, ducking, holding. And then, from the northeast, something that changes everything. Hull number 173, a People's Liberation Army Navy Type 052D Luoyang 3 class guided missile destroyer, one of China's most capable surface combatants. Armed with 64 vertical launch cells, YJ-18 anti-ship missiles, HHQ-9 surface-to-air missiles, and a phased array radar system that can track dozens of targets simultaneously. She is not here for the fishermen. She is moving at 28 knots through the same water the CCG cutter is about to cross. 3 vessels, one narrowing triangle of open sea, and a Chinese Coast Guard captain so focused on the Philippine ship in front of him that he has stopped paying attention to what is coming from his left. The next 40 seconds will leave one Chinese warship damaged, one Chinese Coast Guard cutter crippled, and the crew of the BRP Sindangan watching in stunned silence as China's own fleet collides with itself. To understand why this happened, you have to understand what Mischief Reef means. It sits inside the Philippines' exclusive economic zone, 250 kilometers from the Philippine island of Palawan. Under the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, the waters around it belong, by international legal definition, to the Philippines. Filipino fishermen have worked these waters for generations. Their boats are wooden. Their equipment is basic. Their presence here is as old as any map. In 2014, China began construction on Mischief Reef. Dredging, landfill, concrete. By 2016, what had been a submerged reef was an artificial island with a 3,000-meter runway, hardened aircraft shelters, radar arrays, and anti-ship missile batteries. The 2016 International Arbitration Tribunal at The Hague ruled China's construction illegal under international law. Beijing did not acknowledge the ruling, did not negotiate, did not withdraw. It simply kept building. Now, Chinese Coast Guard vessels and maritime militia boats routinely intercept Philippine ships attempting to reach Filipino communities and outposts in these waters. Water cannons are the preferred tool. They are classified as non-lethal. They cause no bullet wounds. They leave no obvious evidence of violence in satellite imagery. But they can blind a sailor, break a bone, drive a vessel off course, flood an exposed deck, sweep a crew member overboard into shark-infested water 40 miles from the nearest Philippine outpost. Non-lethal on paper, potentially lethal in practice. And behind the Coast Guard cutters, usually maintaining a distance that keeps them out of direct incident footage but close enough to make their presence felt, the PLN warships wait. Hull 173 was that warship on September 3rd. 0919 UTC. The chase intensifies. CCG-5204 is now 600 meters behind the Sindangan and closing. Its water cannon is sweeping in short, controlled bursts, each one calculated to push the Philippine vessel off its intended course without making direct physical contact. Direct contact means escalation. Water cannons mean harassment. Harassment is controllable. Harassment is deniable. Harassment has been happening in these waters for years without triggering the mutual defense obligations of the U.S.-Philippine alliance. It is a precise, deliberate, practiced art form. The Sindangan holds its course. Its captain knows the protocol. Maintain heading. Do not make aggressive maneuvers. Record everything. Every camera on the vessel is rolling. Every radio transmission is being logged. The Philippine Coast Guard has learned from dozens of these encounters that the footage is as important as the vessel. But the CCG 5204's captain is making a different calculation. The Sindangan is holding course and not yielding. The standard tactic of forcing a bow crossing, cutting across the Philippine ship's path to push it sideways, has not worked at these speeds. So the captain makes a decision. He pushes the throttle to maximum. Twin diesels surge. The cutter accelerates from 22 knots to 26. Its bow lifts slightly as the stern digs in. The water cannon continues firing, and the captain begins swinging his wheel to port, beginning the wide arc that will carry him around the Sindangan's bow and across her path. He is looking at the Philippine vessel. He is not looking to his left. 0921 UTC. Hull 173 is 400 meters northeast and closing at 28 knots. On the destroyer's bridge, the officer of the watch sees the CCG cutter beginning its turn. He reaches for the radio. The cutter does not respond. He sounds the ship's horn, one long blast, the international signal for danger. The cutter's captain is in the middle of a precision maneuver at maximum speed in a high-stakes encounter. The horn registers somewhere at the edge of his awareness. He does not process it in time. The destroyer's officer of the watch grabs the engine telegraph, all back full. It is already too late. The CCG 5204's bow, swinging hard to port at 26 knots, crosses directly into the path of Hull 173's port quarter. The destroyer's engineering crew feels the order and begins the emergency stop procedure. The engines howl in reverse. The water behind the destroyer churns white. But 6,000 tons of warship moving at 28 knots does not stop in 400 meters. Physics does not care about rank or flag. The impact comes at 0922 UTC. The sound travels across the water before the visual does. A deep metallic concussion, the kind of sound that does not belong in open ocean, the kind of sound that every sailor recognizes immediately and involuntarily as the sound of something going very wrong. On the BRP Sindagon, the crew feels the shockwave through the hull before they see what caused it. Then they turn. The CCG cutter's bow has struck the destroyer's port quarter at a combined closing speed of approximately 18 knots. The geometry of the collision means the cutter's bow absorbs most of the energy. Steel crumples inward. The forward section of CCG 5204 buckles like a compressed accordion, the bow plating folding back against itself in a V-shape that exposes the vessel's internal forward compartment to the sea. The cutter's forward gun mount twists in its housing. The barrel, previously aimed at nothing specific, now points at a 30-degree angle it was never designed to achieve. On the destroyer, the damage is different, structural. A long diagonal gouge torn through the port plating at the waterline, paint stripped to bare metal in a scar that runs 4 meters along the hull. The impact shockwave travels through the ship's frames, rattling every fitting, shaking crew from their seats, triggering automatic damage control alerts across 6 compartments simultaneously. Both vessels lose way immediately. The CCG 5204's bow, swinging hard to port at 26 knots, sits low at the bow. Its engines, still running moments before, have cut out. It is drifting in its own debris field, small pieces of hull plating and foam insulation spreading across the water around it. The destroyer is making slow circles, her crew running damage assessment along the port side. And the BRP Sindagon, which was the target of this entire operation, is 800 meters away and unharmed. In the first 60 seconds after impact, the Sindagon's radio operator is on open channel. Chinese vessels, this is Philippine Coast Guard vessel BRP Sindagon. We are standing by to render assistance. Do you require medical support? Do you require search and rescue? We can assist. No reply. The call goes out again in English. Again in Mandarin. Silence. On the cutter's foredeck, crew members who had been manning the water cannon position moments before the collision are no longer visible at the rails. Whether they went down with the impact or took cover behind the buckled forward structure is impossible to determine from 800 meters. The Sindagon's captain makes the decision immediately. Deploy the RHIB. Approach at slow speed. Do not enter their vessel. Offer assistance from the water. The rigid-hulled inflatable boat goes into the water. It moves toward the crippled cutter at 5 knots. It gets to 200 meters before a Chinese voice comes over the radio. Stand off, do not approach, we do not require assistance. The RHIB holds position. On the Sindagon's bridge, the officers watch through binoculars as Chinese sailors work their way carefully around the collapsed forward section, moving in single file along the rail, their movements slow and deliberate in the way people move when they are checking whether the deck is stable beneath their feet. The destroyer's crew has launched their own small boat. They are approaching the cutter from the north, a Chinese-to-Chinese rescue operation conducted in full view of the Philippine vessel they had been harassing 11 minutes earlier. Nobody on the Sindagon says the obvious thing. They do not need to. By 1000 UTC, the situation has stabilized into something that can be generously called controlled embarrassment. The CCG cutter is not sinking. Its forward compartment has taken water, but the watertight bulkheads aft of the collision point are holding. The vessel is low at the bow and incapable of its own propulsion, but it is not going down. A Chinese maritime tug, which appears on AIS tracking records to have been operating in the area before the incident, reaches the cutter by 10:34 UTC. The tow line is attached. The operation is quiet and efficient. By 1100 UTC, CCG 5204 is under tow heading northeast. Hull 173 has completed her damage assessment. The port plating gouge is significant cosmetically, but has not compromised watertight integrity. She is underway at reduced speed, also heading northeast. The supply boats the Sindagon had been escorting to the fishing community near the reef have completed their delivery to the fishing community during the chaos. The fishermen received their rice, their fuel, and their medicine. The mission, despite everything, was completed. In Manila, the response comes within hours. Philippine Coast Guard spokesperson Commodore Rafael Achuba releases a statement confirming that the BRP Sindagon had been subjected to unlawful water cannon attack by CCG 5204, and that the subsequent collision between Chinese vessels was directly caused by the reckless high-speed maneuver of the CCG cutter. He releases footage, 47 seconds of video showing the arc of water cannon fire, the accelerating cutter, the approaching destroyer, and the moment of impact captured from the Sindagon's steered camera. We offered assistance immediately, 3 times in 2 languages. The offer was refused. The world can draw its own conclusions. President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. addresses the incident the following morning. This is what harassment looks like when it goes wrong. Our crew completed their mission. Their crew collided with their own warship. The waters around the Spratlys are Philippine waters under international law, and we will continue to exercise our sovereign rights in them, regardless of who tries to stop us. In Beijing, the response follows a now familiar pattern. Chinese Coast Guard spokesman Liu Diujin acknowledges that a maritime encounter occurred in what he describes as Chinese territorial waters near relevant islands and reefs. He makes no reference to a collision. He makes no reference to the water cannon attack. He describes CCG 5204's operation as lawful rights protection enforcement. No footage is released by Chinese state media. No casualty figures are confirmed. No statement addresses why a People's Liberation Army Navy-guided missile destroyer was operating at 28 knots in close proximity to a Coast Guard harassment operation without coordinated communication protocols. The silence where those answers should be is its own answer. What happened on September 3rd did not happen in isolation. The South China Sea carries more than 60% of global maritime trade, estimated at over $3.5 trillion in annual shipping value. Oil from the Persian Gulf, consumer goods from Chinese factories, semiconductors from Taiwan, food from Southeast Asia. Every day, thousands of vessels transit these waters because the alternative routes add weeks and thousands of dollars to every voyage. Mischief Reef sits near the center of this system. Since 2014, China has transformed it from a submerged feature into a military installation capable of projecting power across a significant portion of this corridor. Runway, hangars, radar, missiles. From Mischief Reef, Chinese aircraft can reach Manila in under 20 minutes. Philippine fishing communities that have worked these waters for centuries now operate under the shadow of a runway that did not exist a decade ago. The tactics used to enforce Chinese presence here have a name in military analysis: gray zone operations. Actions that fall below the threshold of armed conflict, but above the threshold of normal peacetime activity. Water cannons instead of gunfire, blocking maneuvers instead of torpedoes, laser illumination of bridge crews, ramming of unarmored civilian fishing boats. Each action is calibrated, designed to assert control without triggering the treaty obligations that would bring the United States directly into the confrontation. On September 3rd, that calibration failed. Not because the Philippines pushed back harder than expected, not because American assets intervened, but because the rush to intimidate created a situation where two Chinese vessels operating without adequate coordination in close proximity at high speed ran out of room at the same moment. The gray zone swallowed its own operation. The crew of the BRP Sindungan completed their mission. The fishermen near Mischief Reef received their supplies. The CCG cutter went home under tow with a crumpled bow, and the PLAN destroyer went home with a 4-meter scar along her port waterline. And somewhere in the spaces between the official statements, between Manila's footage release and Beijing's silence, the truth of what happened on September 3rd sits in 47 seconds of stern camera video that the world can watch for free. No gunfire, no missile exchange, no diplomatic incident that either side wanted to escalate. Just a Philippine crew that held its course, a Chinese cutter that did not hold its lane, and a Chinese destroyer that could not stop in time. The South China Sea has seen close calls for decades. Ships crossing bows in the dark, aircraft buzzing at unsafe distances, fishing boats rammed without warning. But September 3rd was different. On September 3rd, the intimidation turned inward. The formation that was supposed to project overwhelming presence instead projected something else entirely. The hazard of operating at speed in close proximity with incomplete coordination in waters where everyone believes they own the rules. So here is the question. Was this a tragic miscalculation born from overconfidence, or is it evidence that China's gray zone operations in the South China Sea have become so aggressive, so routine, that basic seamanship is being sacrificed to political performance? Drop your answer in the comments. I read every single one. If this breakdown gave you a clearer picture of what actually happens in these waters, hit like. It matters more than you know for this channel. Subscribe if you want more real maritime encounters broken down exactly like this. The events as they happened, the doctrine behind them, the consequences that follow. And share this with someone who thinks the South China Sea is just a trade route, because on September 3rd, it was something else entirely. One Philippine crew completed their mission. 2 Chinese ships did not complete theirs. And somewhere near Mischief Reef, a wooden fishing boat carrying rice and medicine arrived exactly where it was supposed to. Sometimes that is the whole story.